Hey everybody, so welcome back. So for today's project, we're going to walk through the process of changing your oil on your Jeep Liberty with the 3.7 liter engine. This particular Jeep, it's a 2005. It's my wife's Jeep, and as of today, it has 167,000 miles on it. So just something to be aware, and I've noticed this on the forums, and if you look at Craigslist and other things I've seen, I've had personal experience to this, is as these Jeeps get into the higher mileage, they start to consume oil. And for this particular one, I've noticed in the course of 5,000 miles, well, it'll actually use like 1.5 quarts of oil, right? This thing does not leak a drop. It doesn't smoke or anything, but it does use oil. And it's just something that I've noticed over the course of owning this. We bought it with 68,000 miles on it, and essentially we put 100,000 miles on it, and for the most part it runs great. But we've noticed over the last probably 1.5 years, 2 years, that as it gets up in age, it starts to use oil. And my friend had a 04 Liberty Sport, pretty much identical to this, and it actually threw a rod bearing, and it turns out that she was not in the process of checking oil regularly, and what happened is the oil got to the point where it was so low in the sump that it spun a rod bearing, and then the motor was junk. And if you look in Craigslist, like parted out Jeeps and everything else, that's a very common description of when these things go down, bad engine, spun rod or something like that. And what I've noticed is that this thing can be down 2 quarts in the sump, and the oil light never ever comes on. And what I think is going on is that because it gets higher in mileage, starts to use oil, owners aren't paying attention where the oil level is. They think it's fine because they're not seeing any leaks or anything like that. And it gets to the point where the oil level gets so low, and the indicator light never is triggered when it should, it results in catastrophic failure for the engine. So if you're watching this and you own a Liberty with high mileage such as this one, get in a routine of checking oil every weekend, and that's pretty much what we do, and we monitor it. All right, so with that being said, why don't we go to the bench and I'll show you what you're going to need to do to change oil in your Jeep. All right, guys, so the process is pretty straightforward. All you're going to need is a catch pan, your oil filter. I've been using Fram oil filters on this particular vehicle since I've owned it, never had an issue. And I'm using a TG 3600. Using 5 quarts of Castro GTX 5W30 high mileage. You're going to use a strap wrench for the oil filter, and then you're going to use a 13mm 6-point socket to take off the plug in the oil pan. So why don't we go ahead and get underneath the vehicle and show you what you need to do. Alright guys, so we're underneath the vehicle right now. So what we're looking at is the cross member that pretty much straddles the oil pan. And this is the oil pan right here, and if you look, you're going to see a little form in the oil pan where you're going to see the plug. And you can get at this without getting it up on a jack. There's enough ground clearance where you can just essentially reach underneath the cross member and loosen up the nut. So why don't we go ahead and do that now, and we're going to drain the oil. Alright, so now that the oil is drained, what we're going to do now is we're going to remove the filter. So if you look, you can see the filter. But that's not what I want to show you. So if you look, you're going to see a little trough, right? And it's that little angle iron right there. So what Jeep has done for us, because essentially what's going to happen is where the oil filter location is, as soon as you take it off, the oil would essentially go across a bunch of suspension components and essentially drain onto the floor. So what Jeep has done is essentially to put this sheet metal trough underneath the filter, and what it's going to do is it's going to direct all the oil that comes out of the filter housing down into the pan, so you won't have any messy spills on the floor or anything like that. So all you gotta do is just put your catch can underneath that trough, and then you'll be all set. So why don't we go ahead up to the top of the vehicle, and we'll show you how to remove the filter. All right, so we're on the top side of the vehicle, and if we look down, there is the oil filter. All right, and for the most part, it's pretty easy to access with a oil filter strap wrench. You just grate right on the bottom and essentially throw it on there and loosen it. If you're having a problem trying to get at it, you can always remove the serpentine belt by cranking it up on the tensioner. But for the most part, what I've seen, it's really not necessary. You can really get it off without too much fanfare. So why don't we go ahead and do that now, and we'll go to the next step. Alright, so now that the filter's been removed, the only thing you really want to check on the old filter is make sure that the gasket came off with it. Make sure it's not stuck to the filter housing. And what you want to do before you put the new filter on is just take it and put a little bit of oil on the gasket, just so we know it's not going on there dry and gets a good seal. So why don't we go ahead and do that now. We'll put the filter back on the Jeep and we'll start filling it. Alright, so the filter's on. Pretty much just reach down there, spin it on, and tighten it up by hand. Don't over tighten it, because what will happen is the next time you go to change the oil, if you put a lot of force on it, you may have difficulty in getting it off. Alright, so the next thing you want to do is you want to fill the oil, right? And the oil fill is right here. I've already removed the cap. And what you want to do is inside the neck of the filler tube, and we'll look down there as best as we can. If you look, there's actually a baffle or slash diverter, whatever you want to call it. So if you ever try to put a funnel in there, or you try to fill it, essentially all the oil has to go in through that little passage on the right hand side. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that out just for the ease of filling. It's not required, but it does make things go a little bit easier. So why don't we go ahead and pull that out, and I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, so here it is. Here's that little diverter thing, baffle, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure why it's in there, but go ahead and take that out. Just use a hook and to grab it, and it'll come right out. So if we look back down in that neck, you're going to see a nice clean shot to fill it. It's going to make filling a lot easier, a lot quicker. So why don't we go ahead and fill that now. Alright, so now it's the point where you're going to fill it. Go ahead and put the entire container into the engine. It does use 5 quarts, so just go and pour the whole thing into it, and it's pretty simple. And once you do that, now it's just a matter of putting that breather, diverter thing, whatever it is, back in the fill tube. Put the cap on, check for leaks and any other issues, and while you're underneath the hood, check your battery and stuff like that. Make sure that there's no issues. Just for reference, there's quite a bit of corrosion on that battery terminal, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that up before we get into the winter to eliminate any cold start issues. All right. So essentially, that's all you need to do to change the oil in your Jeep Liberty. It's a pretty straightforward process. It doesn't take that much time yet, and you're not even gonna get that dirty if you do it correctly. So if you like this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you like what you saw, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you a member of the community. And thanks for watching. So if there's any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, go ahead and leave them in the comments box, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And as always, thanks for watching, and have a great day. See ya.